I'm Roger Kuhns, and we are on Sevastopol Television. And today we are with Sturgeon Bay Utilities General Manager Jim Stawicki. Hi, Jim. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Roger.
Great.
Well, how about you?
Real good, and glad to see some solar panels out there. We'll take a look at those in a minute.
Yep.
And, you're the general manager. Tell us a little bit about the utility.
Well, we're a municipal-owned utility. We're an enterprise fund of the city of Sturgeon Bay, which means we don't exist based on taxes. Our ratepayers are our bosses and our customers. They pay for the services that we provide, and we provide electric, water, and wastewater services to not only the citizens of Sturgeon Bay and the residents here, but from an electric standpoint, we also serve 4 neighboring townships.
And what are they?
Sevastopol, Sturgeon Bay, Claybanks, and Nassauapi. In total, we've got about 9,000 electric meters out there, about 4,500 water and wastewater customers within the corporate boundaries of the city of Sturgeon Bay.
Oh, that's great. And when was the utility initiated?
We're old. Sturgeon Bay Utilities has been around since 1904.
1904.
Yes.
So, what would you say, as you think of 1904 to now, a couple of the key benchmark moments where you say this is a profound change in the utility? Can you think of one or two?
I can't go back far enough to answer
You weren't
your
here that
question
long.
really well. I guess overall, and I'll go back to 1904, I'd say we're a community asset, and exist solely for the benefit of the residents here. And again, owned by them. One of the beauties of municipal ownership, as we are, is I get questions and comments sometimes in the grocery store. The management is local here. The governance with our board of commissioners, that's all local. So if a customer has a beef, if a customer has a compliment, they're welcome to walk up to any of us, and we'll certainly hoist it aboard.
So, about 22 employees on energy and support,
Correct.
and they're all customers.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's great.
Correct.
And you're a customer too.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
As opposed to other larger type utilities, investor-owned utilities, we generally call them, we tend to cater to the absolute needs of our customers. So we will construct to different standards because we have so much rural territory. Much of our construction is of a beefier nature, one that can handle a tree laying on top of it and continue allowing energy to pass through that conductor so we don't put our customers out of service. A more expensive way to construct and do business, but again, for the benefit of our customers, it makes the most sense.
Well, you've got a lot of lines that are in forested or partially forested neighborhoods and areas.
Yes.
And so I think we've seen a couple of big windstorms where you guys have responded pretty quickly.
Yes.
I thank you for that. My mom is on your grid.
Oh, wonderful. We appreciate her business. We're also unique in that we're bisected by a fairly sizable body of water, the Bay of Sturgeon Bay. So we maintain 2 redundant systems on both sides, and that goes for water as well as electric. So we're a little more complicated than most systems.
Very much so. What's the average revenue like last year, or something like that? What's the business balance? How are you doing?
Annual revenue is about $21 million. So we're a fair-sized business, all on our own. What's nice is we have a voice in most of our costs because we're a member owner of WPI Energy, which is a joint action agency located in Sun Prairie. We're one of the 51 utilities that owns WPI Energy.
That's great. And so is there a member of SBU that's on the WPPI board, or how do you communicate needs and growth and demand?
Yes. I actually sit on the board. At the present time, I'm the vice chairman of the board of WPPI.
Congratulations.
Well, it's work. But again, it gives us that voice and a seat at the table, which is what we seek.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So when we think about, let's talk about the city of Sturgeon Bay first, if that's in your head.
Sure.
What's the megawatt hours per year consumption for a city of about 9,500 people in the city itself, kind of thing. I read in 2014 it was about, I think, something on the order of 54,000. Let's see, I had that somewhere. I thought.
Now, this is dependent on the unit of
Right.
measure you want to
Oh,
use, but
52,784 megawatt hours in 2004 was on your website. So is that sound about right for the city, or is that everybody?
well, our sales as an entity, and this includes our townships, was about 150 million kilowatt hours.
Okay.
That's what customers see on their bill. The unit of measure used to bill a customer is a kilowatt hour.
Right.
That's the amount of energy, the electrons that are flowing through our conductor to our end customer. Another way we measure our size and our usage is in demand. So basically, that's the size of the pipe that needs to come
Right.
into Sturgeon Bay to serve all those customers. We max out at maybe 32, 33 megawatts is the size.
That'd be your peak.
That's our peak demand,
Right.
correct. In the summer months, we've gotten as high as 35 megawatts.
So maybe explain that a little bit so people understand what the peak means, because some people say, well, I don't know why we don't have more energy, or why can't they just turn up the knob or something?
Sure.
Maybe you could explain that to us.
Well, any system, and we have a distribution system here, but we're all connected via the transmission system to the generators out there. Generators are those coal plants, the wind turbines, the nuclear power plant down in at Point Beach. All of those are interconnected, and they're sized such that all those generators need to produce at a little bit above the maximum peak load that all of the communities and all the businesses in those communities require at any point in
So
time.
we can just turn the switch on any time. We can say, Jim has done his job. My lights are on. I don't have to worry about this.
Who really thinks about energy?
Not many people.
Not many people. As long as when you walk into that room and click on that light switch, the lights go on, the fan runs in your furnace, you really don't think about it.
That's
And
a great point.
frankly, it's one of those commodities that is amazingly cheap in our country, but unfortunately, people tend to take it for granted, and there's probably not enough efficiency and conservation going on as could be going on to reduce our footprint, but we're working at that.
What's your cents per kilowatt hour kind of ballpark?
Our cost is about 10.6 cents per kilowatt hour for a residential customer.
That's below the national average.
It's below the national average, pretty average for the state of Wisconsin. Two ways to look at that. That may be our cost per unit of measure. We look at our customers' bills, though, and that's what counts to us to a great extent, because that's what you're forking out every
Right.
month out of your paycheck. Our customer bills tend to be lower here because our customers are pretty good at conservation and efficiency in comparison to other places.
And also, a lot of the households up in Door County, and some of them in Sturgeon Bay proper, have some of their heating and water heating through propane and stuff like this. So there's a mixed energy use in the homes, isn't there?
In most homes, you're correct. Now, we don't do natural gas.
Right.
That belongs to Wisconsin Public Service. But you're correct. There's different sources of energy for any given home.
So one home might have a very low electrical draw if they're using wood heat, propane, and things like that.
Correct.
And others might be, if it's a building that has electric baseboard heating, they're going to be drawing a lot more.
Correct. Their draw is higher, their electric bill is higher, but they don't have a natural gas bill.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
life is a bunch of trade-offs,
Yeah,
right?
right. What percent of electrical energy that you sell is directly from renewable sources like solar, wind, anything else you can think of? Not much hydro, but a little bit of hydro in Wisconsin.
Right around 15%, if I'm not mistaken. I mentioned that we are a member owner of WPPI Energy,
Right.
and WPPI, among the major energy providers in the state of Wisconsin, has been a leader in renewable energy and the use of renewable energy in the state. We surpassed the state legislatures and the governor's requirements a number of years ago. As a matter of fact, the former CEO of WPPI Energy is a resident now of Door County. He
Oh.
lives up near Cana Island, and he was a bit of a visionary. Actually, he's taking over.
What's his name?
His name is Roy Thilley.
I know Roy well.
Sure.
I was thinking it might be Roy, but I
Okay.
didn't just want to. We're friends.
Sure.
And he's a member of the Climate Coalition of Door County,
Yes.
and so am I. And yeah, he's playing with a full deck. He's a very smart man.
Well, he sat on the governor's task force, as a matter of fact,
Yep.
under Governor Doyle. And Roy's been very active. I mentioned him being a visionary. Actually, he's taking over the chairmanship of the NERC board, which is the North American Electric Reliability Council.
That's good news.
Well, that's a pretty high-profile position,
Yes, it
and
is.
Roy is well deserving of that.
Yeah.
But he did a wonderful job of visioning the future back in the mid-2000s, about when I joined Sturgeon Bay Utilities and WPPI Energy, and convinced us and helped us to understand what the future of energy was. So at that point, we got into a fair amount of renewables in comparison to the other utilities out there.
So where do you see the renewables going in your portfolio of, how to generate electricity? Right now with the high, mostly coal, then nuclear, then I think it's renewables, and then natural gas plants and things like this in the WPPI stable of energy generators.
Correct.
Do we have a target of renewables from 14-15%, bringing that up and getting that coal down? Or how do you see this mix in, say, 20 years?
Well, a little bit of it is reading tea leaves, okay? There's quite a bit of flux, as you're probably aware, in the national energy scene at this point. The Clean Power Plan has been put on hold and is under review, if you will, by the Supreme Court. They've sent it back, remanded it to lower courts to take a look at. So we don't know how, just what those requirements are going to be, or I think we have a pretty good idea that they will come into play. It's just a matter of when, more than anything. As far as we're headed, I think that's going to drive the environment more than anything. Just because the requirements are fairly aggressive, especially in comparison to the way that utility companies generally move, often at a glacial pace.
Yeah.
But the EPA requirements are going to drive, that industry to a great extent, and move everyone toward a lot more use of natural gas, but especially renewables. If I were to pull out a crystal ball, we may see a penetration of 20-30%, a third of our generation being renewables at some point,
In the
15,
10,
20 years down the road.
And nuclear energy, which is highly subsidized.
Yes.
And we're actually seeing a decrease in nuclear energy use, some out of fear, some out of what to do with the waste, a whole bunch of reasons. Some perceptions that are fact-based or just emotion-based in some cases. So with the high subsidy of nuclear energy, and that may change too, do you have a plan, and you don't have to detail it, but I was just wondering how you think about, okay, if the carbon fee or tax or something like that on coal and natural gas goes up, which I think it will, and then we have the subsidy shift in nuclear, that puts your two main electrical generators in an economic unknown, really. So do you guys have these discussions and say, oh boy, we got to really do a strategic and risk assessment on these things? Is that how you're looking at this?
Yes, and again, as a member of the board of WPPI, I'm involved in more of a governance type role. Okay, so as far as the planning, we have extremely capable staff at WPPI Energy that brings these ideas forth, makes recommendations. Personally, I'm a little saddened by the state of nuclear in Wisconsin. Okay, it was a shame that the nuclear energy plant in Kewanee shut down, and purely economic reasons. The plant was extremely viable, had another 20 years or so on its license, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And simply because of economics, at that point in time, they were forced to shut down because there were no buyers for that energy. Okay, I think we're going to regret that happening 10 years from now. 15 years from
I think
now.
you're right on that one too. It's an interesting dilemma that we find ourselves in. If people wanted to find out more about Sturgeon Bay Utilities and WPPI plans and forecasting and maybe some projections and how to really understand how the energy planners are working, where would they go?
We have our own website. WPPI also has a website that lays out in an annual report just what the state of the industry is for us and where we think we're headed. Currently, we're out there looking for 100 megawatts plus of wind energy. We have a solicitation out there looking for that level of energy because it's going to fill some gaps for us as well as assist us when the Clean Power Plan comes back into play.
And you have a renewable energy program.
We have a number of programs here, as a matter of fact. We are contributors and to the Focus on Energy program in the state of Wisconsin. There's a conservation element, but also a renewable energy element to the Focus on Energy program. So the monies that we collect from our customers to encourage conservation and efficiency all flow into that program. In addition, we have our own programs that we fund locally to tune up air conditioners, to plant trees in the right place. They're a little more mundane, but a little more local
Pretty
also,
important, though.
and very close to our customers' hearts. For businesses, we have our Main Street Energy program. So, we look for gaps in programs that are offered to our customers. And about 7-8 years ago, we certainly saw a gap in how we were serving the mom and pop shops, the gas stations, the shops along Main Street. We didn't feel they were being served very well. Lots of programs for the large industrial customers, plenty of programs for residential, but that in-between stage, they weren't being served. So
I'm glad you mentioned that because the mom and pop businesses really are a heart and soul of a community.
Yes.
And that keeps, generations in the community, of course. And I also think some of the focusing on them a bit really shows individuals and businesses what, I can do this.
Sure.
In an industry that many people often say, I just don't know what to do, or my participation won't matter. In those instances, it does matter.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
And we try to make it easy. These small business owners, it's a difficult enough task keeping their businesses running. We try to make it as simple as possible to use our programs. So we have an energy service representative on staff here who goes and meets with these customers of any size. We'll do an energy assessment of their business. I'll put in a shameless plug for someone right now, but we've been working with the Healthy Way Market, which is moving from the west side of Sturgeon Bay to the east side in the old Sturgeon Bay Florist facility.
I know them well.
And we've helped them quite a bit with incentives for their HVAC, for their coolers and systems, and it's been a real great partnership.
So if somebody wants to put solar panels in their house,
Sure.
maybe you could describe how they would integrate with the utility in terms of, on some days they're going to be generating more energy than they're using, and other days they're going to say, hey Jim, we're cold here, pump it in.
Sure.
So how describe the mechanism and maybe some advice, if you have some, about, I want to put solar panels on my house. Now I'm going to call up SBU. What do I do?
Well, we will talk to those people and happy to do so because eventually they have to, if you will, register with us.
Yep.
We have to know that system's out there because our linemen work on that distribution system that they will be tied into with their solar. We have to keep our linemen safe.
Yeah, you don't want a home system electrocuting somebody to put it in the worst possible, right.
Correct. So there's an interconnect there, a tie that we have to be aware of so that when the power goes down and our guys are working out there, that we're aware of that, and that's that's potentially out there and a potential issue for them. When customers come to us, we certainly refer them to the appropriate areas, focus on energy. We'll provide a little bit of advice, but we're not going to tell someone who to go to in order to obtain a
Yeah,
system.
you're not the marketing arm of the business. Yeah.
Well, but the first thing we will have that customer consider is first reduce your footprint.
Right.
I get customers who come in here and they're dead set on, I want solar panels. First question we'll ask them is, what have you done to gain more efficiency and conserve in the first place? Because you may be installing a system that's oversized from where it should be. Okay, so step number one is really be aware of the energy you're using and reduce it where you can. From there, it's a fairly simple matter. There are still state subsidies, federal tax credits out there that customers can obtain for installing solar. The cost of solar in general has dropped significantly over the last even 3 or 4 years, becoming more and more competitive with the traditional sources of energy generation. So, I certainly encourage it, but I encourage moving in the right order. And the other item I want to address is, you mentioned the interconnection between our system and those customers.
Right.
That's an extremely important tie. You read a lot about Tesla and the battery storage systems, and those are still relatively expensive systems. The best energy storage system that exists is our own distribution system. So when customers produce energy and they produce excess energy, they can push it back onto our grid. Okay, and we'll pay them for that energy at our going rate.
What is that rate, by the way? Do you have-
It's that same.
Is that 10 cents a kilowatt hour?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And, we, early on when we were trying to encourage the use of solar, because it was just an up-and-coming technology.
Brand new thing.
We offered special incentives, so we were paying as high as 30 cents a kilowatt hour.
You could do that again. I wouldn't mind.
I'm sure there are a number of customers who would be willing to take that, but.
And so what would it be like in Sturgeon Bay if we put solar panels on every building on the south-facing parts of the roof? How would you modify or accommodate that and look at your business plan and your financials to really have a lot of individual little power companies almost, right? And so all this stuff is coming into your grid. It goes from direct current to alternating current. You level it out, you homogenize it, and you distribute it.
Sure.
This seems like a very efficient thing to do to me. How would you see that working in Sturgeon Bay?
To be honest, we're grappling with those challenges today. I mean, even as we speak, that's called distributed generation, and it's bringing those small generators directly to the load. So they're serving load directly, as opposed to a coal plant or the nuclear plant,
Right.
which may
the
be
point source.
right dozens or hundreds of miles away. It's not as efficient to carry that energy
Yeah,
over
we lose a
long
lot
distances.
of energy in those long lines.
Correct.
Yeah.
So to have it close here to the load is certainly of benefit to all end users. The challenge is sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day.
Right.
The wind doesn't blow 24 hours a day. So this grid and our distribution system is critical to those customers retaining the ability to flick that light switch and
Right.
have it come on. I'm not smart enough to have run the numbers and know what capacity we'd wind up with given the kind of deployment that you're talking about. Overall, I think we're headed in that direction. We may not get totally there in my lifetime, but we're certainly going to see more of that distributed generation. And we and the Public Service Corporation of a Commission of Wisconsin are going to have to adjust our tariffs and our pricing models so that we can be compensated for our fixed costs.
Right.
Because someone still has to
You've
put
got 'em.
that conductor up there, those poles, so that we can serve you when it's dark, when it's not windy. But
This is a really interesting economic model, isn't it?
it is.
And it's a new one.
Well, currently, the model's a little bit upside down.
Yeah.
Because most of our costs are fixed at the local level, but most of our revenue comes in based on volumetric charges, which is based on usage. So when you think about it, it's kind of flipped upside down.
Yeah.
Gradually, slowly, the regulators are beginning to understand that and working more with the energy companies. What you have to be careful of is not to stifle what you're trying to encourage customers to
Right.
do, and that's to conserve, and that's to be efficient.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there. You need to assess, how can I use less energy and still have a good quality of life?
Right.
How can I have a consistent flow of energy, which you guys are really great at?
Thank you.
And the third thing is, as we enter this era of possible more expensive fossil fuels and less expensive solar, wind, geothermal, and even passive systems, which are, in essence, once you get the construction done, free, how do we deal with that? So, do you have, will Roy Thilley be doing any of this in his new role? Will WPPI, do they have a group in their energy planners and strategizers? Are they starting to build these economic models so that you can go to the whole grid organizations and adjacent ones as we move power around when people need it? It's like a subway system almost, you know.
Sure.
Is that, how far along are we that? Are we like in the nascent stages, or are we like, well, we've got some great financial models to build here?
I'm going to say we're in the fledgling stages
Yeah,
right
it
now.
seems like it.
But I can tell you that every stakeholder in the continuum is interested in this and is working towards something. And the energy companies and utilities are by far have the most vested in this.
Yeah.
And the greatest interest in it working long term and frankly for the benefit of all, because it's like anything. You can't have one winner at the table. All right, everybody has to win
Right.
in this game, and
Yeah.
frankly, I think we all can.
Oh, I agree with you. I do not see this happening without you guys. I think you guys are a vital part of the heart. And, but I would propose, as you know, we think about innovation. A city of 9,500 people is the core, and then your customer base out and so on and so forth. That population might have 4 of those 9,500 in a household, which would be a customer. So this city is actually a great size to do an innovative, forward financial, economic, community and environmental based model, and then as a prototype for the other cities in Wisconsin. I think you've got a unique opportunity to lead the way.
Okay.
And this is something that, as I talk to people that are looking at LEED homes, leadership in energy and environmental development, and solar panels and wind and so on, stuff like that, they're saying, yeah, we're not sure where we're going, but we really want to go there. And it's important, I think, to the community's life and thriving to make sure that that utility of yours is integral in that, because I don't think it'll work without you guys. I'm absolutely convinced it will not work unless there's a great partnership of the individual homes and businesses. And you've already got all that pretty well going in your relationships, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I think you're in a good start. And like you said earlier, which, again, hats off to you, and I have my hat off because of this. You're local. You live here.
Exactly.
You're not sitting in Madison or some distant place saying, you guys over here have to do this. I think that's great.
I'm going to echo that, and I was just going to bring that one up because we've seen it in other communities. The community of Boulder, Colorado is looking to go to public power and that model, a municipal model. Our end customers make the decisions ultimately. We're not sending any money to shareholders all over the country or all over the world.
Right.
Everything stays local. So the focus is local. So what fits, what works best for the community of Sturgeon Bay and the surrounding area? That's where we need to add.
What do you think would be a third or fourth step after you look at the efficiency of how an individual uses power, and you look at the relationship between a home with solar panels and the Sturgeon Bay utilities, and you get that hookup and that safety and all of those things in line? What might be the next step if this city wanted to say, let's say, quote unquote, we're off grid? Now, that doesn't mean you're disconnected from SBU, and SBU is not disconnected from PPI, but what you become is the city becomes a power plant because of rooftop and wind and things like that. What might be the next step that, from where you sit, you'd need to see?
I think that all the stakeholders need to come together on the economics, okay? Let's face it, finances drive much
Yep,
of the world.
that's
okay?
right.
And we're certainly dealing with technological issues, but finances and what my customers are ultimately paying to us or paying to someone else or installing on their home still drives a lot of the decision making. So I think that's a critical step in the 4 or 5 that you mentioned up front. Who's going to pay for this?
Yeah.
How are we going to pay for it? And what's fair and equitable? That's what we'd be looking at more than anything.
I am absolutely excited about this journey. I can't wait and to see where we go. And my little sustainability company, we do things like this for various businesses and stuff, and I just can't wait to see where Wisconsin goes. And being a native Wisconsinite, although I was born in Madison, which in some cases seems like a long way away.
Your own island.
I
We all
know,
understand
it's
that
a little
here.
bubble of Madison, but with my family up here and my mom and sister, and we got people all over the county.
Sure.
It's a real important aspect in our lives to be part of this journey and be a really constructive part of it. I want it to be fun, exciting. It will be exciting, and it is exciting. And wow, we can't do it without you, Jim.
No, there's no boring day here at the utilities, and you're always interacting with customers, and customers have an opinion on everything, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. This is with Sevastopol Television, Jim Stawicki at Sturgeon Bay Utilities. He's the general manager. And wow, thank you for your openness and amazing insights. Could we look at those solar panels outside?
Absolutely. They're
Great.
getting a little dated, but,
Yeah.
but they're oldies but goodies. Let's
So we're
put it
going to look
that
at
way.
what's out on the front yard. So Jim, out on the lawn as we drive by Sturgeon Bay Utilities, we see some big mechanical flowers. Tell us about these things.
Well, they do have a flowery look, I will give you that. I believe we started that project or thinking about it in about 2008. And those 3 solar panels out there actually serve the west side Sturgeon Bay Fire Station. They do not serve our facility because we wanted to make sure that they were having an impact, if you will. And on a facility our size, the output of those solar flares, as they're called, wouldn't make as much of a dent in our facility as they do in the fire station. So those were constructed, and we had contracted with an entity that's local here, Lake Michigan Wind and Sun.
John Hippensteel?
John Hippensteel's facility, and he's been a great friend to the utility. I've been amazed at his, just his vision and his drive. He's done a lot of great things around here. But we wanted to establish a demonstration project and cobbled together funding from a couple different sources. We paid for about 1/3 of it, or our ratepayers did.
How much did this cost?
Again, I'm going back to the
Yeah.
mid-2000s, so they were a little pricey back then, but about $60,000
So
for
it
the
might
3
be
of them.
half of that now, or something.
Well, it would be less than half of that.
Okay.
Okay, at this point in time. But that's about a 3.5 kilowatt system. Probably handles up to 50% of the load and the requirements of the West Side Fire Station. Even when it's cloudy, as it is today, unfortunately, those are generating energy, albeit a little less than on a full sunny day. But those are solar trackers also, which means they turn with the sun, they move with the sun. That gives us about 30% more output than fixed solar panels. We really put those in place and tried to make them eye-catching so that people would take notice.
Right.
We put a sign out there that describes what they are, the joint partnership that went into place in order to establish them and put them in. We even built flower pots around them, or pseudo flower pots, just to give them an eye-catching look.
Yeah.
So people do take notice of them. Certainly identifies our building very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
When we give directions, they always include the solar flares. But they've certainly served their purpose after almost 10 years. They're still performing well. Their life cycle is probably 25 plus years. And the energy source is free. It keeps coming year after
Yep.
year. And,
Yep.
even on cloudy days, as I mentioned, they're still producing.
That's great. And do you have plans to put any more either panels up on SBU buildings or these kind of things around? Do you think local, again, I think when people see stuff, it becomes less scary.
Yes. We've continued to work with local entities. We helped the Sturgeon Bay High School, as a matter of fact, install about 10 kilowatts of solar panels on their
I know
roof.
Seth and Keith over there.
Okay.
And
They're not overly visible, although now that we did help them remove some trees just because they were
Shading
dropping
out,
stuff.
yeah.
Well, not only shading, they were dirty trees, and actually the school wanted them gone. Otherwise, we would have just kept trimming the trees. But so there's 10 kilowatts up on that roof. Crossroads at Big Creek
Yep.
has been a beneficiary of a number of energy programs and some of our largesse in that also. And we work with local residences and homeowners on that same thing. We are always looking for other projects. As a matter of fact, WPPI Energy has a program going on right now that's looking to install renewable energy at not-for-profits.
Right.
And customers or potential customers or builders can bid into those projects. So,
Boy, have I got some ideas for you on that. I think we can find a few not-for-profits that would definitely like to talk to you about that.
excellent, excellent. We're looking for prospects.
Great,
So
great.
please,
Well, we'll sit down with a list at some point, yeah.
good, good.
Well, that's fantastic. Again, Jim Stawicki, General Manager of Sturgeon Bay Utilities, here in Sturgeon Bay, a city of 9,500 people. You have heard about how this utility with its grid is connected to a larger part of Wisconsin, but also is locally focused. Local, local, local. As Jim said earlier, he's a customer, and my mom's a customer. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank
It's
you.
great stuff.
Appreciate
Great
it.
stuff.